Community Center versus Council Chambers. Do we have the,
Recording in progress.
Yes, sir.
do we have roll call?
Member Gamez?
Here.
Member Gerganis?
Here.
Member Marshall? Member Sauls?
Here.
Member Wills?
Here.
Chair Miller?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Very good. Have the minutes before you. Everybody look those over. I only see one correction. On the first part of the motion made by Vice Chair Miller should be Marshall.
Okay.
I just don't want to. Anybody ever have any other changes or anything you want to add? I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the corrected minutes.
Second. Motion been made and seconded. We have the roll call.
Yes, sir. Member Gamez? Member Gerganis?
Yes.
Member Sauls?
Yes.
Member Wills?
Yes.
Chair Miller?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Now we have election officers. Do I hear any motions to this effect?
I'll make a motion that we keep Vice Chair Eric Marshall and Chair Jason Miller.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. We call a roll.
Member Gamez?
Yes.
Member Gerganis?
Yes.
Member Sauls?
Yes.
Member Wills?
Yes.
Chair Miller?
Yes.
Motion passes.
And now we have public hearing item. Item number 1. I'll open the public hearings for item number 1, which is the city-initiated text amendment for shipping containers. Do we have a presentation on this?
I do. I'll do the, I guess, the synopsis of the history of this. My name's Randy Lavelle, Code Enforcement Supervisor, City of Avon Park. The shipping container issue has been ongoing for a while here in the city. Currently, the city does not allow shipping containers in any residential or commercial location within the city of Avon Park. Now, as you drive around, and I did, and I think I was over 20 at least locations within the city that currently have shipping containers on their property. So obviously there is a need to revise our code and to allow shipping containers in certain areas. That would be the recommendation of the P&Z. We had a public hearing on this. The big issues that came up from the public hearing that we kind of came from, or how this came from the actual drafting of this. I can tell you the ordinance itself that you see the template here came from the city of Arcadia. They also had a very similar issue like we did. Then we had that public hearing and we had a joint session, if you remember, and then we had audience participation, and then CFRPC took notes during that joint meeting and revised some of the actual meat and potatoes of what was presented originally and came up with kind of a draft of what you have today. So I guess the big purpose tonight is I think everybody's in agreement that there is a need for them. The big thing is where, how many, things like setbacks, aesthetics. I know one of the things was, can you stack them or not? That's stuff that we're going to ask that you guys mull over and come up with some recommendations. Stephanie from CFRPC is here. She'll go through a PowerPoint on this and the other one. And then I guess we'll take conversation or comments as we go.
Okay, if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide. So my name is Stephanie Von Poleski Bush. I'm with the Central Florida Regional Planning Council, and as Randy said, we had the workshop, I think it was in March. And so, as Randy said, we started out with Arcadia, some language from Arcadia, and because we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. And so we've updated it and made some changes according to what the audience and other people have suggested. So this is a proposed text amendment to your land development code, and so the amendments do not address shipping or cargo containers for non-storage purposes. So no, they're not going to be permitted for residential or animal storage. And so there's a new definition, as you can see up there. So just briefly, it's a storage container designed and manufactured according to specifications from the International Standards Organization as a standard reusable vessel intended to be loaded on a truck, trailer, rail car, or ship, used primarily for shipping or storage of goods. Trailers, as defined by this code, do not constitute a shipping or cargo container. So that's another big issue that was discussed about trailers versus cargo containers. And so there'll be a new section, 2.0504, and so the containers will be limited to C1, C2, C3, C4, I1, and I2 zoning districts and comparable PUD zoning districts. They will be prohibited in residential districts and properties serving residential uses except for temporary purposes. And so the temporary purposes would be during construction of the residential unit or loading and unloading if they're just bringing some equipment or whatever. It'll be limited to one container per each 20,000 square feet of lot area. And then the new text provides location and setback standards where they may be placed on a lot. So they have to meet the front yard setback requirements of the zoning district, and then they have to be set back a minimum of 7.5 feet from the side and rear property lines, and then set back 20 feet if it's located adjacent to a residential district or use. The appearance, the exterior finish or painting have to match the primary structure. And then the new section kind of goes on, and this is just a summary. They may not be used for human or animal occupancy. They cannot obstruct rights-of-way, easements, access drives, or required parking areas or vehicle or pedestrian circulation on a site. They may not be connected to water or wastewater utilities. They can have an electrical connection. They may not be stacked on top of each other or joined in any manner. They may not have graffiti, peeling paint, or any visible forms of deterioration. And they cannot, obviously, store hazardous materials. And then on the next slide, and so the language kind of goes on here. So as far as compliance or the removal of the containers. So as Randy said, there's already quite a few containers existing in the city. So we've kind of come up with this idea that, so they must be, if they're not located in a compatible zoning district or they exceed the maximum number of containers allowed, they have to be removed or it has to be remedied within 36 months. If it's located in an area where it's prohibited, or if the setback requirements are not met or does not meet the appearance standards, it has to be removed or remedied within 180 days. And then the last one there, where standards are established for temporary use is not met, like during construction or loading and unloading, or where general restrictions are not met, they have to be removed or remedied within 30 days. And then these are your motion options. So, obviously all this is just this is what we recommend, but if you have any other items that you want to add or subtract, we can certainly take that into consideration.
Going back to the setback, the 20 feet, I think it said.
Right.
There.
So if it's adjacent to a residential district or use, it has to be 20 feet setback. But if it's,
Now, we're talking about side setback or rear and front? Say home on rear and front's 25 feet.
right. Oh, right. Well, so,
Good point.
yeah, I actually, normally in this, where it says setback, they would have said,
Now, commercial is different.
yeah,
And I would assume most of this is going to be commercial.
yeah, right. See at the top there, all the Cs, all the Cs and then the Is.
I would say we might just need to check that 20 foot because I think commercial will be different. And I think I don't know, I'm not dead sure what it is.
Well, it has to meet, it has to meet the minimum requirements of the existing zoning district. So if it's 25, then,
It's got to be 20.
right. That was just if it's adjacent to a residential area. So if it's either residential zoning or residential use. So, so potentially, yeah, if it's next to, adjacent to, then it would have to be set back 20 feet from that.
And then what about the ones that have been here forever?
Right, so if you go back one, that's what all this is. So, if they're not located in the compatible zoning district, or, all these different,
They would have to be community.
right.
Yeah.
And that's from the time that it's adopted.
To add a little bit to that, not saying they're right, but Arcadia, they give you flat 180 days. They don't care if if they're not in compliance in 180 days, and they're going to open up a case on you, and you're going to be in front of the magistrate. This is obviously more reasonable, because sometimes 180 days is not reasonable. So
Give me an example. Are we talking about if it's not the right setback? Or are we saying as a whole, it's got to be moved in 180 days? Where I'm going with this is I'm just going to use my old place of business.
they're
I've
stacked.
been there 30 years. So that's what I was saying when this really started, that I don't see how we can hardly go tell that man in 180 days he's got to take it out.
So I guess first of all, it would depend on what the zoning is. And,
It's commercial.
okay, and then it would depend on how many you have and how many, like how far back they are set, what the setbacks are. So if they meet the requirements, then they can stay there.
They can stay.
Sure.
So you guys are not thinking about doing like grandfathering in any current ones that have been there, i.e. other businesses on commercial properties to, and I mean, I'm just asking because it's the same thing, right? I mean, you look at other businesses that may have one or, a 30-foot one that they've had for 20 years. Along the same lines, it's kind of one of those pushy topics, hey man, for the last 30 years you've had it there, you gotta move it now.
I can tell you that was something that was talked about.
Yeah.
And that's something I think that the P&Z board can, these are just suggestions. These aren't,
Right,
yeah.
right.
So, yeah, if you chose to enact a grandfather clause or whatever the proper verbiage is in P&Z verbiage, then that is something that we will move forward with and present it to city council.
But if it's in a commercial district or an industrial district, then, and it meets, they meet the setbacks, or maybe they would just have to shift it on the property, or,
That's what
But-
he's saying.
yeah.
There's some businesses that have them stacked.
Yeah, which
stack.
is not allowed.
Yeah,
And
no stack.
Big T in particular they've got good 6 or 8 of them stacked.
yeah.
in the back. I didn't even, honestly, so I know they meet the setback because you can't even see them from the road unless you're coming in off of Round Street or whatever that street is behind it. But I think that would be the thing. That would be against ordinance if they're stacked. Now, I know Tire Terminal, I believe, has some stacked ones as well. So that is something that, you know, I went by, I know everybody, I counted them, I have everyone documented in the city currently. So if it was a grandfathered in issue, I already know who's in, I know how many they have. I can go in and take photographs, so if anybody tried to say in the future, hey, wait a minute, no, I was grandfathered, no. We have it documented at the time that this ordinance is enacted. So then anything after this ordinance is enacted, then they have to adhere to these rules. That is an option.
Is there anybody in town that has these, that it's not a container, but it's a semi-trailer that doesn't have its?
Yes, there are. Mr. Long has some in the back of his business that are actually 18-wheeler, or what are they, 60 footers? I don't know what it is. Yeah, 50, whatever. Yeah, he's got a couple that he uses for storage back there. And we had talked about that, I believe, in the other meeting as well.
I know we talked about it, but I don't think we ever did.
We didn't. It was just conversation.
About just
But it's obviously, could become a loophole. All right, well, we can't have these shipping containers, so we'll go ahead and start buying, 18-wheeler containers. So that, I think it's something that could be added if you so desire. But I certainly could see that becoming a loophole if it's not addressed. Please.
Yeah, on section D where it says setbacks, just add C2 to that because it's not in there. I know it is at the top.
Yeah, you're
It
right.
says C1, C3, and C4. You can add
Oh, in the
C2 to
actual
that.
language, okay.
Yeah, in subsection D.
So, yeah, subsection D on the second line.
You are correct.
I just don't want to get overlooked.
Well, I also don't see the industrial either, the I-1 and I-2.
Yeah, it's at the top in the location.
Yeah, but not the setback, because they have their own setbacks as well.
Okay.
So Randy, back to the trailers, they're already restricted. They're not allowed to be used, right?
No, there's nothing that's, either our shipping
It
container.
specifically says in here, trailers of any kind are prohibited. That's already in our code.
So is shipping containers, right? They're not allowed to have those either.
But we're not doing anything with the trailers, are we gonna leave it as a prohibited?
That's what we had talked about in that meeting, that because I brought that up, because I did see some in a couple different businesses, and that was discussed, is that something that we want to incorporate into this? And this is the first meeting we've had since that joint meeting. To me, they look no different than a shipping container. Actually, they sometimes look worse because some people they take the wheels off, but they leave the axles and all that are still on there. So I think they're not as aesthetically pleasing as actual shipping containers.
Right.
And I think they would be a little bit harder to paint.
Well, I go back to Big T because that's where I spent out my life. But for example, I think all those are painted gray.
I believe so.
They match what he's got. But I think we need to look at some type of grandfather clause, because just like all those have got permanent fire run to them, we've got stairs that actually wrap around them. They're set up pretty nice. I'm not saying it's 100% correct, but I just think it'd be a bunch of expense trying to do something with it. And I don't want to put a burden on any. We got a hard enough time getting businesses in there, and I don't want to put too much burden on them. And
that would be a huge expense to do something with this, because I was having a toolbox put on back there not too long ago. I looked in there and they have a lot of storage, and they have a lot of stuff in those.
To me, it's a whole lot better off than tires being inside of out on the ground.
Correct.
From a mosquito
Mosquito standpoint, yeah, because you can shut the door if you need it.
So I guess it's maybe somewhat of a one-on-one case, if we can't get it kind of.
I think if you're going to grandfather one, I think you almost need to grandfather everything. That's
I
my,
don't have any problem, you've looked at it, I mean, do you think we're making a mistake?
by grandfather,
Sitting around?
of all of them, I think Big T has the most, but you can't see them unless you're really in the rear of the building.
Yeah.
And for you to be in the rear of the building, you have to be back there doing business. So I don't know that that's a mistake. I don't know the safety issue of stacking those containers if a hurricane comes.
Well, they're all welded together.
Oh, so they are all welded together.
Yeah.
They all had roofs put on.
Correct. Yeah, they're all.
Okay. So, I mean,
They were there more than 20 years ago. Charlie came through here, so
yeah,
they're still there.
but that would be something that would certainly,
Where else are they at, Randy?
let's see, the mayor's got a couple behind his place. They are Mr. Taylor Construction. He has, I think it's Dennis Taylor. He has them. Big T has them. Tire Terminal has a bunch of them. Macklin's got a couple. There's I think Gomez Harvesting has a couple. There's literally 20. I counted. There's one right by the fire department. There's a building right, the little side entrance from City Hall, like you're going to Verona, right, like you're heading towards Hendricks, that little alleyway on the north side of the fire department. The little strip mall there, there's Butler's, I think it's called. They have one behind there. You have Bagwell's got numerous. You have Bobby Lee Aluminum's got numerous. You have Glade Supply out on truck routes got them in the back. There's a lot of well-known names have them on their property.
If we grandfather them in, can we set in there that they have to at least bring them up to the appearance?
You can.
Yeah, that's what I'm,
That's not bad.
he's gonna pay
I feel like that's a good
make them look like,
halfway point.
yeah.
This is pretty much whatever you want it to be. You were given a template like here, and so you can mold it to however you want. And
My
then,
concern is the semi-trailer, not so much the storage containers, because those are designed for storage.
yeah, and I think there's only 2 locations that, yeah,
But a semi-trailer is not designed for
no,
on-site storage like that.
no, sir, it's not. It's transit. We could add that into, I don't know why we couldn't add that into the verbiage of this and put it under, I don't know about creating a separate subsection or whatever for, but I mean, if you can, I'm sure it fits in the same meat and potatoes as this ordinance. I don't know why you couldn't add another, 2-point whatever and add whatever the proper word is for a I call it a trailer, but a tractor trailer, so a trailer, commercial trailer. But there would have to be a definition, obviously, of what that is, and then just add it as part of this part, and then you're done. They're either prohibited, or they're not, or they're grandfathered in, just like the shipping containers are. But there's only like 2 locations in the city that have them.
Yeah, as far as your verbiage, just set it up to the point where it specifies if at one point it was used to transport, on the highways, with attached axles or whatever the case may be. That way, even if they take the tires off or take the axles off and leave it as a trailer itself, at one point, this is what it was. Because even like on shipping containers, the container itself doesn't have a tag attached. The trailer
Correct.
itself is what used to transport.
Correct.
So that means some type of verbiage to that extent, to where that way there isn't a loophole.
Like a necessity, if it had a tag, then it cannot be used as a,
So there's already a definition in your ordinance, your LDC, about trailers, and it says, "A non-automotive vehicle designed to be hauled by road, or a vehicle for transporting something, or a vehicle designed to serve wherever parked as a temporary dwelling or place of business. Mobile homes and recreational vehicles, as defined in this article, are not included in this definition." And then we added, "Shipping containers, as defined in this code, are not included in this definition." So, I mean, there's already a definition of trailer.
So they're already.
And it's already
fully
prohibited.
And it's already prohibited. And so, yeah, so that is, let's see, it was on here. So, yeah. So those were always prohibited. Well, shipping containers were also always prohibited.
Yeah, it's both of them are prohibited.
So then what do? You go back to them and say, hey, it's got to be treated like shipping container, tire's got to come off, yada, 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 and you can use it,
Or do you make them
or you
buy a shipping container?
Switch it out to a shipping container.
That's up to you.
That's up to you. And I know, that's why we're here, because both issues that we're talking about are prohibited, period.
Yeah, so
In
right
the
now,
city.
everything's prohibited,
So-
even though it's still happening, which is what brought all this up. So, so the question is, do you want to continue prohibiting the trailers? And if so, then you would have to give them some kind of a 180 days or whatever you think to get rid of it, or grandfather them in. I mean, there aren't that many right now, right? There's only
Two locations.
There's two right now. Right.
Then they do, just put it in there.
Right. So there's only two right now. So I mean, I guess you could grandfather them in and have them bring it up to aesthetics, or whatever, to paint, whatever the language is. But
Did you say the two there are Longs?
I believe Longs, and I think Richard Taylor, I think, has one, if I remember. It's over there by Macklin's. It's one of those sites, I think can't remember the name of the street, I'm so tired. But it's right, it's off of Anoka, right by Morel. It's by Morel, and it's one block. It's still commercial. It's considered C2. So they can have it, or, well, they're not supposed to have it, but, I mean, if we allow these, the location can have one.
Are they on the ground?
I think one is, and I don't believe Longs are, but don't quote me on that. I just don't remember. I was just more interested in the Connex containers, and while I was driving around, I said, whoa, what are these? And I thought they were Connex containers until I looked closer at them. And he was, they were storing a bunch of like generators and all that in there. So I'm like, no, these aren't Connex containers. These are tractor trailers. So that's how that came up. But it wasn't a rampant issue. It was two locations, if I remember correctly, and that was it.
so basically, you could either grandfather them in and have them bring them up, have them bring it up to aesthetic standards as listed there, or you could not grandfather them in and give them a time that they have to remove it, whatever you choose, 180 days or whatever.
Now, are you gonna, whatever suggestion we give you, you're gonna re-massage that, and then we're gonna come back again, and then,
Well, I think at that point, we take them to city council for the first reading.
Because so you were making a recommendation to the city council, and so we would change the language that you suggest and then take it to city council.
Have you guys had a lot of complaints in regards to the tractor trailers, or not?
No?
Okay.
No, this actually started out, when I became involved with it, it was the prior city manager.
And the reason I ask is because if you were to grandfather, these two locations that have had them for however long, if there's been complaints in the past, I could see where that may create an issue moving forward, that, hey, these guys got grandfathered in. But if there hasn't been a complaint in regards to them, then it's easier for me, at least, to make the call and say, you know what, I'm all about grandfathered in, and moving forward, no.
I can tell you historically, in my 4+ years here, I've never had a complaint on either.
Okay.
The Connex containers, with the exception of when you see one in a neighborhood.
Okay.
And then the phone rings frequently, and we currently have 2 or 3 locations that do have them, and we've kind of waited to do any enforcement, because if we're not enforcing the commercial side, how can we, you know, in good faith, go after the residents? It's just not the right thing to do. Because equally are both not allowed in the city right now. So
I don't think residents, they need to be there.
no, I 100% agree.
Right.
You know, you can have a pod dropped off for a little bit while you're moving into a house or moving out of a house, and then that pod's gone. But
Or construction.
construction, yes. Yeah, and you see those where the construction companies frequently put all their tools and all that and lock them down, and then all their supplies as well.
That was only one thing I was going to bring up just for y'all's opinion too, is maybe we should, is there any way to do a major construction, maybe be allowed more than one? Minor construction, like if you're just getting your windows replaced or something like that, something minor, limit it to one?
Yeah, you could do, I mean, most commercial projects are gonna have more than one. I can tell you, like right now, I think you've driven by Walmart when they're getting ready to do a huge, you know, Sebring one's already going through it. You go by there, you see about 20 of these out in the front parking
That
lot.
brings up a good point. How many's behind Walmart?
There's only 2 there right now. It's on the north side of the building because they're getting ready to do an addition to the pickup area on the north side of Walmart. So they're going to expand out about 10,000 square feet and make their call-ahead curbside type a lot bigger. So that's why they have those there right now. It's for future
Not
construction.
in the back.
There's some 18-wheelers back there, but I'm not. Sebring's got about 20 of them out there.
Maybe that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But if you'll notice, late in the fall before Christmas, before they set up, there's a bunch
But
back.
that would fall in the.
But, yeah.
Right,
yeah,
that's-
exactly.
Correct.
But it's,
Still within there.
it's still commercial. It's,
Yeah.
zoning is commercial, so they would be permitted anyway.
Don't see them from the road either. They are back.
Yeah, they purposely put them back there so they're not an eyesore. Plus, they don't want to lose parking.
Probably was.
So you do have a maximum number in here though.
Right.
One for every 20,000 square feet, so how many would that give Walmart?
Oh, wow, that's huge. I can only,
But it would still be within that time frame. But they would be.
yeah, and they're not going to be, you know, they're going to be in and out of there
Right.
quick.
Well, I think we need to add something to this about.
I would have grandfather clause.
Okay.
The ones that are there.
The ones that are, upon passing of the ordinance, the ones that are documented by code enforcement through photographic documentation, and, you know, these people are going to have to allow us on their property so I can take pictures of them because, you know, I don't see a problem with that, especially when you say they're good to go with what's left. They're probably going to welcome you instead of having to get rid of them in 180 days. So,
And then I would.
So that's just but that's just cargo containers, right?
Right.
Okay.
Trailers or whatever the trailer trailers are, go ahead and grandfather them in and just no more from then on.
Right.
I would agree with that.
Because if we don't, somebody's going to take advantage.
I'll tell you, that'll be a loophole, and then instead of cargo containers, you're going to see the 18-wheeler containers all over the place.
And both have to be brought up to our appearance.
Correct.
Are you going to be specifying the size of these containers? Like, and going back to the big T, I mean, those things are what, 35, 40 footers?
I think most are 40-footers, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, we're going to grandfather them in.
Correct.
But, I mean, for anything in the future, you can set whatever.
And then are you, as far as, you know, terminal call and say, hey, I want to bring in 2 more, you know, are you going to allow them paying a fine?
If they have if they have the square footage for their lot, and if they have the room, let's say they have a 100,000 square foot lot, that means they can have 5 of them there.
Right.
So if they have a 140,000 square foot lot, then they can add 2 more, as long as they don't stack them.
But what I'm getting at is, would you suggest having them pay a fee to tack that on there? To bring it onto their lot?
Well, right now, that would have to pass through council because they set the fee schedule. And matter of fact, we just did that last night.
Again, just a thought, I mean, in regards to that, because, yeah, that's fine, the ones that have been grandfathered in, but if they got an extra, 100,000 square feet, bring them on, no big deal, but hey, charge something for it.
Could be a suggestion,
I mean-
sure.
Just a thought, but
It would just have to be added to the fee schedule agreed upon by council under resolution.
So read us what you got.
All right, well, so first of all, we're gonna fix that language that's already on there in section D that we discussed. Adding C1, C2, I see, and then the I district, I1 and I2. So we're just gonna fix that. And then as far as adding another section at the end, to grandfather the existing
Documented.
right. Let me rewrite this. So grandfather, the existing documented containers, but that they have to be brought up to aesthetic standards.
Set forth by your new code.
Aesthetic standards as set forth in the code. Okay. And then as far as the two trailers are concerned, the two existing trailers as documented.
Are also grandfathered.
Are also grandfathered.
And that location is not trailer. The existing locations, you use it.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, but I may have, like, if I'm driving around tomorrow, I'm like, damn it, I didn't see that one before. I don't know if we want to limit it to, or just any prior documented trailers prior to, this, use the same verbiage, are grandfathered in. And I'll look a little bit harder now that I'm looking at trailers too.
But also must be brought up to standard.
Yes.
Okay.
Then do we want to put something in there, Tammy,
Brittany,
written, I'll get y'all next week.
I answer your phone this time.
Do we want to put anything in there, because she did make a good point, if somebody's got a big construction project, they may need more than one to hold it. And I don't know whether you say allowed up to two, or
Say if we divide it up on residential, you can have one, 'cause I think that would cover most residential.
Or do you keep the amount consistent with the the square footage of the lot? So let's say, I'm telling, we've got some big developments proposed, we're talking 1,000 or so houses. That's gonna require numerous, we're talking, 100 acres. So to limit them to 2 shipping containers is not realistic.
Well, it's based on square footage.
Right, so, but if we keep it consistent, even with the ones they bring in for construction on the square footage of the lot, so if they have 100,000 square feet, they can have 5. If they have 200, they can have 10, you know what I mean? Because they're only gonna be there 6, 8, 10 months, and then they're gone. It's not like they're gonna keep them there, so
Yep. Run it with the same requirements.
I would keep it consistent with,
that's fine, at least that gives them a little flexibility.
correct.
All right.
Randy, speaking of that, are they still working on this one over here, across from Brittany School there? Katie Holman, is it?
I know it's sold,
Again?
Yeah, the original development that was proposed there, it went through site plan review and the plating and crickets. Next thing I know, I see a Greg Carlson sign out there, and it was for sale and sold again to another, because that was rezoned or annexed by I think, ordinance, if I'm not correct. So that one, it's already got an ordinance to it and how many homes they can put out there and everything. It was a couple hundred homes.
Yeah, it was 2 or 250.
Yeah, it was-
But that much is gone, and now somebody.
Now somebody else has bought it, and now they could go back to that and use it for the, the ordinance already been passed on that property. But I've not heard any, since it's been sold, I've heard nothing.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing, and I'll entertain a motion.
we don't want to reread. No, what I'm saying is, we don't want to come back and us after all the changes are made, or y'all good with letting it go on council just after they change it, and y'all will see it again.
I mean, if we have an issue with it, we can look at whatever they get in the packet for the council meeting, and we can
You
always.
guys can come join
Yeah,
us.
we can come.
You're all welcome.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just rounding up.
I'll make the motion to forward it to council with changes.
Motion been made and seconded to.
Yes, sir. Member Gaines? Member Gerganis?
Yes.
Member Sauls?
Yes.
Member Wills?
Yes.
Chair Miller?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Double pass.
So it's all in favor.
Public hearing, item number 2. This is the text, city initiated text amendment for farmers markets.
Okay. Different from, well, kind of the same. Technically, I was thinking, yeah, there's nothing in there. But technically there is. Current land code prohibits what they call fruit stands, roadside fruit stands, which could be the closest thing that we have to a farmer's market. So that would be somebody set it up like we've had it like Freeze King parking lot, where got a bunch of people in there selling watermelons, selling cantaloupe, selling corn, you name it. And that's kind of the closest thing. Well, we have in land code for fruit stands, it's clearly outlined on what a fruit stand is, and these roadside fruit stands do not fit that. Fruit stand has to have rigid construction, has to have a bathroom, it has to be in a C1, 2, 3, 4 area, so it's specific. What this is for is we get a lot of calls, especially with this time of the year coming up with November or October and all that for harvest. What do you associate? You know, those of you from up north on it, you have a lot of farmers markets. So right now they're prohibited. Can't have them. And we get calls, and you know, I get called everything under the name because I tell them we're not allowed to have them. And then always, why? Well, because that's what code says. So I think I think they are family friendly. I think they are part of a neighborhood. They're part of if you go around to like Wauchula, if you go to Punta Gorda, I mean, they shut streets down once a month or so, and they have huge multi-block farmers markets, and they have thousands of people that show up. So we want to allow them, but regulate them. So here we are. This was taken, again, like we kind of stole Arcadia's. This came from Wauchula. And we want to keep it short and sweet, and we don't want to get all kind of crazy rules, but at the same time, we want to make sure that there's not one popping up on every street corner. That's all we do. Is it looks like a Mockley. You know, I don't know, for those of you been on a Mockley. Okay, so yeah, I know that wasn't politically correct, but it is what it is. I've been down there, and you know what it is. So we want to allow them. So it's, okay, where do we allow them? Do we prohibit them anywhere other than, let's say, you can only have them on Main Street, you can have them only in C4. I don't think you want to have them on, you can have them on C2, which is US 27. I mean, but
Didn't we have a few of them down here at Dolphin Park?
Special event.
that would be considered a special event, which would allow it. But these would be more for the private people. This would be for like the churches. A lot of churches like having, you know, especially with the fall coming up. You want to regulate that they can't sell a bunch of stuff outside. You know, they don't have vape pen. I'm not anti-vaping, but they don't have vape pens, you know, stuck next to the corn, next to some pornographic material. I'm serious. And there are other cities that prohibit, as part of this, pornographic material, and that's, sorry, but that's what it is. So you want to keep it to what a normal farmer's market is, and it's fruit, vegetables, A lot of times you'll see honey that, you know, stuff that locally, the soy soap, candles, trinkets, that kind of stuff, you know, lemonade, iced tea, all that. So eggs, you know, all those type things that are locally grown and produced. So we have a great opportunity here to make a lot of people happy where they can have them. I'm not saying just the ones that host them, but the ones that want to attend and would rather support local farmers, local growers than support Walmart, Publix, and that. So we have that opportunity. It's just, we just, at the same time, just can't make it a free-for-all where you can have one every day of the week. You can have them in every neighborhood, like a yard sale, you can't. So we have to regulate them. So how much do you want to regulate them? Do you want to have them in certain areas? Because you got to remember, churches are mostly in residential areas. So if you limit them to only C1, 2, 3, or 4 of that, you're gonna probably make a lot of churches not real happy. And if you look around historically, they always have a lot of
Does a
them.
lot of the churches do farmers markets?
In other areas, yeah. They, especially around the fall, they use them for fundraisers. They use them, I've seen them at schools. I mean, it's not every week, but I mean, they'll have them occasionally. Yeah, well, they'll set up a parking lot. Well, you know, like they have some of these fall festivals. They'll bring in hay and all that, and then that allows them to bring in like McCracken Farms, or, you know, those ones, the local ones are that locally grow and produce honey and stuff like that. Then they can have that. It's regulated. Somebody had recommended or given me an idea that maybe give them, you know, have them apply for a permit. And the permit's good for 3 months. And once the 3 months is up, you know, you can have, if whatever you regulate on the permit, you can have one a month, you can have one a week, you can have it on only Saturday and Sundays, you can, you know, it's going to have to be regulated. So it's just how much regulation do you want to add to it?
All right, I'll open a public hearing.
All right, so again, I'm Stephanie Von Haleski Bush with the Central Florida Regional Planning Council, and so as Randy mentioned, we've come up with some language from Wauchula. So there's a new definition, and the one we came up with is, so it's the sale of organic and non-organic or otherwise locally grown fruits, vegetables, and other agricultural products, including the sale of baked goods, meats, eggs, flowers, and dairy products directly to the consumer by the farmer or an association of local farmers who assemble at a defined location for the purpose of selling their products directly to the consumer. And then, so there's a new section that we've proposed, and so they should be approved by a special event permit only, which is what Randy mentioned. And then the application needs to include the site plan. And the site plan needs to reflect the layout of the site, the placement of the temporary booths and tents, the location of access to the site, circulation of parking for vehicles, the location of any restrooms, waste receptacles, and then the hours of operation, the proposed hours of operation. So we suggested limiting it to 1 day during the business week and Saturdays and Sundays. So it'd be one Monday through Friday plus Saturday and Sunday. And then it's limited to the hours between 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. So that would be in compliance with the city's noise ordinance. So all temporary booths and tents shall be secured to the ground, and the site needs to be cleared of the temporary structures and any debris within 24 hours of termination of the use. So they can't just keep their stuff there after the event is over. And then alcohol sales are prohibited, and then vendors must display state and health department permits if they're selling food. And so that's, you know, like Randy said, it was kind of short and sweet, but obviously we can add anything you want.
As far as the definition, I know in Lake Placid, there's a lot of like craft and art, like wood carving stuff. Is that something that
Yeah, it does say non-organic, but which could include that. But I was thinking the same thing. When
when it says non-organic, it kind of flows into locally grown fruits.
Yeah,
So,
so we can definitely amend that to say. I mean, because there's all kinds of things like, like you were saying, jewelry or candles or
Yeah.
so locally produced.
Crafts is really what, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
We'll go into, locations. Do you want to be churches, schools, the strip right here, whatever we call this?
See, you talking about Main Street, or you talking, yeah,
Donaldson Park?
well, Donaldson
Is that
Park.
the way we want to do it?
I don't think you should open up to city, owned property unless it's through a special event. That's my own. I think then everybody's, because they have to have permission to use Donaldson Park.
They have insurance.
And they have insurance requirements, and then there's road closures, and then
It's a
there's
little more complicated.
ingress, egress of traffic going in and out of there when other people are trying to enjoy the property for the beach or whatever. Sooner or later, there's going to be pickleball courts there. There is. CRA's already approved it. So there's going to be possibly an amphitheater there. There's going to be a splash pad there. So, and you still have the limited parking, so.
They already have it going on, so.
Yeah.
And then we want to be churches and schools? Is that what we want to do?
The only downside, if you open up to the schools, same situation, right? You got to get permission from the county. And then the insurance situation, so I can see that where, somebody trips and falls and breaks a leg, hey. So I would probably stick it to the churches, or not stick it to them, but.
You want to know where we all at?
Yeah, I can tell you that a lot of the requests that we've had to turn down were for Main Street. They wanted to have them like on private property. Let's say like where Camla's property, the one that was Spaller's garage, they just purchased. They tore down part of that property. They have a nice grassy area on the one side. That would be something that I believe, it's a C4. You got parking issues, of course, and that's a big consideration. You have,
Where you got that spot where they tore down the old wild building?
yeah, but that's city-owned property. That city owns that property. You have, well, really, there's not a lot if you're really going up and down Main Street. If you limit it to C4, I mean, that doesn't mean you have to, but I don't see these happening in like Winn-Dixie parking lots or Walmart parking lots. I see these more as a family. Everybody seems to put them, they want them downtown, but they have to be on private property. They can't be on the right of way. They can't be in the off-street parking area. They have to be on private property. Well, you have like Union Congregational, they have a huge, they have certainly Florida Avenue Baptist, the big churches, they have plenty of that. So again, we're back to churches.
What is the zoning designation of the churches? Is it like
They're like R1, there is not one. They're all in different zoning, but
They can be
they
wherever.
can be anywhere. They're allowed, permitted anywhere, houses of worship. So if you want to limit it to just that property, you may get blowback from, I'm pretty sure you're going to get blowback from some other local people that wanted to put them.
No, I think we should personally allow it in commercial or industrial.
As long as it meets, as long as you have proper parking.
Well, and it's permitted.
Sure.
And if it's a problem, then we don't.
We're going to look, honestly, we're going to be looking at the site plan beforehand, and if the site plan's not approved, then they're not going to have it.
Well, if we have an issue with parking or traffic because something is so large and so attractive, if we didn't want to renew the permit or require
Correct.
them other traffic.
Especially if you have like a clause like it creates a public safety issue. You could just put a little thing, or the overflow, the parking, the volume of parking or pedestrians or patrons, whatever you want to call it, basically produce
You might could tie it into how many booths and things like that you allow.
could do that as well. You could
If it's
limit.
a smaller parking area than their own,
As part of the permitting process.
But now,
Sure,
so
but that's going to have to be an ordinance.
But going back to the location, right, because we're trying to brainstorm this, everything that I see, it's always been, like, your fall festival, right, it's been on Main Street.
Correct.
So say if ABC Church wants to do one, obviously they would have to, how does one get access to be able to use a city-owned like, not so much Donaldson Park, but the one right here across from Central and Main Street.
Where the basketball court is, yeah, no, that's never used.
Right, but I mean, say that location there, what do they have to do?
It's public parking, so I don't know, I'm unaware of
Are you referring to use it just for parking or?
Well, no,
to
just
set up booths?
to set up booths there.
city property. That's
Right.
again,
Like
we're-
city
It
property.
would be a special event.
Special event.
it would have to be a special event.
I gotta play the devil's advocate, where can you have it, where would you?
Yeah,
That's what I'm asking. I mean, that's why you're getting paid the big money to be here.
but no, I mean, but that, again, going back to that deal, how does one apply for a special event permit?
Currently, that's, she handles this special.
So for special event permits, how that goes is there's a form that needs to be filled out. We have an indemnification and insurance form that they have to fill out, and they are required to have insurance at least 2 weeks before the event. So once that's submitted to us, we present that to city council for approval. And then once they get that approval and they make sure they get that insurance, then it's approved and they can move forward.
So if you were to set that up, right, part of me wanting to do a farmer's market every other Sunday, for example, why not have that form set up? Hey, listen, this is what you're gonna need way ahead of time. Once you fill out this and you're approved for the permit, now, okay, you don't have to take it before city council every single time, but hey, you've been doing it for the last 4 months, okay, not a problem, you're good for a year. At that year's end, okay, you gotta renew it, now you gotta go back to the same process, and then bring it back before city council again, or you make it good for 2 years, whatever the case may be, to try to expedite it, because shy of somebody having 5-10 acres where they can do that in the city is not gonna happen.
Makes sense.
So.
Oh, that makes sense.
Just a thought, I mean, like I said, whether it's on I would probably do Main Street just because the road closures, or you can every other Sunday, or you use that one spot.
The
basketball
only
courts.
complication I would see is with road closures, we have to follow, specifically on Main Street, we have to follow certain restrictions. FDOT requires us put an actual directional sign
Yes.
that informs them, and we have to do that for 2 weeks. So that would be a complication.
Will you tell them what the cost of that is?
Yes, so the last event that I came up for was around $4,200 just for us to do that. Now that during budget discussions, they did consider potentially going out and buying the directional boards. And there's also, we are currently undergoing discussions with FDOT and the county to potentially have jurisdiction over Main Street. So but that's very early on, it's very preliminary, we're just starting those discussions.
We also talked about having, I think Camel was the one that asked, but turning in a special event request and then having multiple dates on it. But then the only problem with that is it's kind of like they're getting to reserve that area and no one else will be able to use it. So that's why we kind of shot that idea down.
I mean, like I said, that's the downside of what we're trying to, I see what we're trying to do here, but you're still limited on locations unless you just set it back to, well, they can do it at their own church parking lot, but, the traffic issue is gonna come into play.
But, the other thing is, the synopsis of the whole thing is we ought to look at driving stuff downtown to get more people downtown. You ain't got the space, or you try to put too much limitations on it. It's hard.
It's not gonna work. I mean, you're right.
When my kids were little, right here, they used to have a circus. They had a little circus right here. That's been years back, but I hadn't seen a circus around here in years. But this, to me, is kind of a perfect spot. There's plenty of room to line up. You got this parking, you got parking a couple other places, so, but I don't know how you get there if you don't have the space to do it. You want to allow it, and I get that, and I think it's a great idea, but we need to figure out.
Where?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say can we not start with a broad stroke of multiple zoning like what we were kind of talking about?
You can.
If we decide that that's not you know, we get a lot of complaints or it's an issue, we can always narrow that down in the future.
As long as they meet whatever parameters you put in as far as, you know, location and the actual, if you're gonna require them over maybe a certain size, they have to bring in porta potties. I mean, it can be as restrictive or non-restrictive if you want it. I just think if you don't put some restrictions on it, they're gonna be everywhere, and this is gonna be crazy. And so I really, if you think about the churches are the best, I'm not saying limit it to the churches, but they have the best of everything. They have the room, they have the parking, they have bathrooms if you need it majority of the time. Up and down Main Street, I don't see a lot of vacant property that's not owned by the city that you can do them on. Now you can, like that Randy's Spaller's old place, yeah, there's a little area to put you could probably put 10 small tents in there, but where are they gonna park? You know, on-street parking, you can park on street, but that's really, everything else is built up. There's no really any extra yards or any of these other businesses if you think about it. I mean, Pure Grit, they got a little bit on the west side, but most of that is CSX Railroad right away, which a lot of people don't realize. You see them now when they're out there working, you can tell where they're parked, but that's not going to work.
Who owns the old SunTrust building?
Dr. Gelf.
I mean,
That would be a good place.
parking lot.
Yeah. That would be a good place to park, and you could set up a few things in there, but, you know, you got a lot of on-street parking, but it's for sale, I mean, right now.
So with just going with churches, are we gonna limit that to say, what if the church says, I don't wanna do it anymore, now they crop it out to somebody to come in and do it for them? So how do we regulate that?
Instead of
And
using
then-
church's property? Is that what you're
Well, the
saying?
church would say, well, that's not my problem, we cropped it out to somebody.
No, they're still responsible for their own property, especially in code. That's the only person we can cite is the actual property owner. So we would have teeth to I guess, to sway them not to do that.
And they'd still have to get the permit and still have to meet the other requirements of the site plan and the bathrooms and all that.
So would we just start with church property and private property on Main Street?
Sure, you can do whatever you want. I mean, this is why we're here.
I mean, most of Main Street's zoned, what,
C4.
C4?
Yeah, all the way down, C4.
So,
And really, again, where do you see most? They're always downtown. If you go to Bartow, it's right down. If you go to Lakeland, right downtown. If you go to Punta Gorda, it's smack dab in the middle of the city.
do we
It's-
have any other C4? I mean, I'm assuming we do outside of Main Street, but
No, C4 is only on Main Street. C2 is all 27. C1 and 2 are more on the south side and some of the north side industrial areas.
so it just puts it exactly where we're talking about.
Yeah, C4 seems like that's where they should be at anyways. I mean, and it is a draw, but you got to have you got to logistically be able to pull it off, and i.e. parking and space to put the tents and safety of the patrons and pedestrians, that they're not walking out into traffic to get to the place. So it would have to be one of the side roads, somebody that had some space on a side road. Obviously, we can't have it anywhere on Main Street because we don't own it. That's FDOT.
Randy, is there any differentiation between farmer's market and flea market?
There is, and
Is it already in the code?
yeah, we already have something in code that covers flea markets. It's in our land code, I believe.
They had just mentioned selling like, woodworks and things like that.
I think that takes away from the actual farmer's market. There's the vision of what a farmer's market is. There's a craft festival vision. That's more of, to me, a craft festival that they have all the time, and those are normally on city properties where they shut the roads down, kind of like the Mall Fest used to be, Blueberry Festival, that type stuff. It's always on city property. I would limit it to just exactly, if you got to change verbiage so somebody, like you say, oh, wait a minute, that's non-organic. Well, my wood's non-organic, and I want to sell it there. So you can even scale that down if you want, so we don't get caught with that. People, if they find a loophole, they're going to exploit it.
So why don't we just take non-organic out? just leave it organic. Because that's fruits and vegetables, that's basically what we're.
That's what we're talking about, yeah.
Why don't we just put
Honey
locally
is-
grown fruits and vegetables and get rid of organic and non-organic?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, take that out.
So only locally grown fruits and vegetables
vegetables.
and honey?
And other agriculture.
Yeah.
Agricultural products would be fine.
Yeah, and then all the other,
because, you know,
Shy of the guy that wants to sell leather belts, because technically leather comes from cowhide and.
yeah.
Always.
You know, Aunt Mabel wants to have her apple pies out there and all that too. I mean, those are part of farmers markets. I
Right.
mean, you know, you bake goods, you know, brownies, all that kind of stuff. I mean, you don't want to just,
So what if you made it edible?
edibles. Yeah, there you go.
Well,
be careful.
And non-cannabis edibles. Yeah, no, CBD does not
you
kill.
know, in the fall, here again, that's, I'm just sitting there thinking, for example, the Bill Owens building,
That would be perfect.
that would work as one concentrated location if somebody could work something out with them that he would allow.
See, again, now, you're right, that's a C4, so, but that would be up to the individual that wants to to work that agreement out. You know, if they want to make money, I mean, it's not saying you have to be a 501(c) or you can't make money, it can't be profitable, but that would be a perfect, because not only there, you have across the street, you have public parking by the tennis courts, and then, you know, you got all kinds of on-street.
Set up.
Sure, so
You can't say.
one of these local farmers could contact them on a weekend, because they're not open they're not doing car repair on the weekends.
Auto options,
Auto options also, yeah,
that backside, I mean, that'd be.
there's room there as well,
So that's all zone C4.
and that's also C4. So I think
So
if you're
you could
going to limit,
to C4 and churches.
I think that would be the perfect thing, C4 in churches. Because that just doesn't, because some people are, yeah, that's church and state. How can you're allowing just the churches to do it and not, yeah, so I think that alleviates that whole problem in C4 in churches.
Only problem you have is if it's a church and a house.
If the DOR code on the property appraiser site says worship or church, I think that would be, to me, we could consider that, go by what the DOR code says on the
They still have to
property.
get a permit, so, you know, they still have to show
they're still gonna
they have to show
But
all of the.
you're right, I've
items.
ran into that, and they've tried to do it's a house, but they're they're doing the church exemption. They don't pay property taxes, so.
But then how many are you gonna limit as far as having little setups? Is there gonna be X amount? I mean, say after 25 or 30, you know, that person's gotta pay to have porta potties brought in, or, you know, I mean.
Yeah,
Well, so if you can you go to the next slide? Sorry. So this was the proposed language. So the application has to, and the site plan has to reflect the placement of the booths and tents and the access and the restrooms, waste receptacles, and then, you know, we've limited the hours of operation. So, you know, you can only get so much on, you know, they still have to have room for parking, so. And so they have to apply, and so, you know, the city's not just gonna rubber stamp.
no, and here's where I think the fire department comes in, because currently in our BTRs, our business tax receipts, there's two sign-offs. There's my sign-off that where they're putting this business, they can have that type of business, and then there's the fire sign-off. So actually, a lot of these farmers markets are regulated by the fire department, fire inspector as well. That's why the tents have to be fire retardant. They can't just put a 8x10 Walmart. They have to be flame resistant. And then that would be where the chief goes in there and looks at it, and he's looking at the site plan, and he's looking at, you know, that there's ample lanes in case they have to get a ambulance in there or a fire truck and all that. And then he's going to be the second part. We could treat this the same way. I could be the first part approval, like, yep, that's C4, you can have it. And then he has a second part that it's just not all the, you know, we have to have separation 10 feet in between each separate tent or whatever whatever, I'm sure there's a fire code that governs that. So, and then with input from him, I think we could regulate it where they're not going to just try to put 500 people on an 80 by 125 lot.
So you could even add that to the application to state, to have a box for Randy and then a box for the fire
Fire,
chief.
I would highly recommend it.
For the approvals like we do on the other building permits and all that sort of thing.
Correct.
Well, let me ask you something. I just was thinking the people call you like you're saying.
Oh, they do.
They want to know about that. Well, you think that maybe if you stop by and saw Mike Owens and just ask him where he's not blindsided, if you just kind of said, would you consider it, and I could tell these people, hey, give Mike a call, and then they can work out the details.
Yeah, because here's I think that's great, but just thinking I always look at worst case scenario, from a liability standpoint, somebody gets hurt on his property, guess who's getting sued?
Well,
Mike Owens. Right, so, and
Some insurance.
insurance, yeah.
I don't know what
But I think it's just, I think the C4, and if there's nothing on C4 that fits it or nobody wants to host it, then it's going to be where the churches are, but we gave them that opportunity and we didn't limit it.
We can only do so much.
Yeah, but to open it up to all Cs, and I think that
And then you can always, if a bunch of people are whatever, you can always revisit this
Right.
in 6 months or a year or whatever. If, you could just, Randy will get those calls.
Sure.
So.
yeah, not everyone's going to be happy, but I guarantee you're going to make you're going to make the majority happy by getting this on the books, especially this time of the year with fall coming up. It's the perfect time of the year to get this on an ordinance. So location-wise, we're looking at C4
Right.
and the houses of worship or
and
churches. Yeah.
That's
So, okay.
She's just gonna make the changes like.
Yeah,
Right.
so so it's going to be limited, we're just going to add a section here that it'll be limited to C4 and churches, and then have the permit form, have a section that the fire marshal approves it.
And zoning.
I don't know if we have to put that, and zoning, right. And then what about, back to the definition real quick. Did we want to change that at all to say
Wanted to add
only
edibles.
locally grown agricultural products, right? So the sale of only locally grown or
Yeah.
agricultural products, fruits, vegetables, and other, and what about, so what about baked
I
goods,
say we leave all that in.
meat?
I would leave all that in
Leave
there.
everything in, other than the organic, non-organic.
Okay.
Or-
Yeah, just take organic and non-organic out.
Okay. Okay. There we go.
Otherwise, we'll just have to make them a list of what they can.
Yeah, and
Right.
less is more.
Exactly,
Less
exactly.
is more. They're gonna.
Okay.
Well, and if it becomes an issue, we can always revoke the permit.
Sure.
So,
Right. It still has to be approved, first of all, so.
All right, I'll close the public hearing, and I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to forward to the council with changes.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, council will change, please call roll.
Member Gammons? Yes. Member Gerganus?
Yes.
Member Sauls?
Yes.
Member Wills?
Yes.
Chair Miller?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Very good. Is there any other business? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved.
Make a lot of people happy.
Thank you.
It's good. Make me happy. All right. We have to close up.
I gotta go look at it.